The sights and the sounds of motorcycle racing in the 1980s. Huge crowds at Kyalami, huge crowds all around the country, huge fields of motorcycles. This particular bike won the South African Championship in 1982, this very week. So it's 30 years ago, almost to the day now, that this motorcycle won the South African 550cc Championship. Keith Petersen was the rider. The team was Presto Parcels Ducati. The bike is a Ducati V-twin air-cooled superbike, as they called him in those days. His teammate was Robbie Petersen, the younger brother, and all through the year they had fought it out on the tracks in and around South Africa. Unfortunately, it all ended that day at Kyalami in a crash, but more about that story later on. Right now, though, we thought, let's take a look at a bike that won the championship 30 years ago. Desmodromic valve operation, that was Ducati's secret, and Dr. Taglioni invented that. In fact, this bike really is the precursor to the famous Ducati 916, believe it or not. 90-degree L-shaped cylinder. It's actually called an L-twin, not a V-twin, air-cooled. And according to the superbike rules of South Africa, the bikes had to be absolutely standard on the track. Indicators, hooters, all you were allowed to change was the fork oil, the disc pads, not the gearing, and the tires you could change. Everything else had to remain absolutely standard. Standard exhausts, but you were allowed to cut big holes in them and take the baffles out. Now out on the track, well, the bike immediately feels, yes, 30 years old. And believe it or not, the Ducati Panther 500 in 1982 cost the same as the big Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha and Suzuki superbikes, around about 8,000 Rand then. Producing around 50 horsepower and weighing just over 200 kilos, it was good for just over 200 k's per hour down the Kyalami main straight. Here at Midval, it's just about cracking 180, which is not bad for a bike of 30 years of age. Front forks, a spindly 35mm steel fork. And to be honest, it feels like there's no oil in the suspension at all. The front end bouncing around on the racetrack. But what a blast to ride a bike that steers so well. Ducati obviously had something right in those years gone by, because they simply dominated local racing with the 500 and the 600 in the 750cc class. The lightweight combined with incredible handling and brakes made this bike literally a world beater. And thanks to Ian Haupt for restoring this Ducati Panther. It's taken countless hours, and I'm sure for Ian it's been a labor of love to restore this bike to what it is today. Thanks to Midval Racer and Nino Venturi for letting us come out to the track today and just reminisce a little bit. Keith Petersen shot to fame with the Ducati after he'd been Jan Eckerhol's mechanic in Europe. Came back to South Africa and simply dominated the 550 class with that Ducati. You see him here winning in Cape Town. And over a period of 12 months, there was no stopping the Presto Parcels rider.
An absolutely fantastic ride.
His main opposition actually came from Robbie Petersen. And then that day, on the 9th of October 1982, Keith was leading the 550 international race at Kyalami. Mario Rademacher managed to get past him, crashed in front of him at Leeuwkop Bend. Keith could not avoid Mario's bike and crashed into the wall with fatal results. So there you have it, and this piece of tarmac, ironically, is all that really remains of the original Kyalami circuit. This is Leeuwkop Corner, and it's still here today. And this is where this bike came to a rest 30 years ago, exactly this time of the day. It's actually 12 minutes past 1 when the accident happened, and this bike ended up over there against the wall. And it was the last race that this motorcycle ever took part in. It's amazing that we've got it running again today. Keith Petersen, of course, well, he suffered severe head injuries when he hit the wall over there. In those days, the track was very dangerous. In fact, Kyalami has taken quite a few lives. When I just think back, Johan Boshoff, one of the first guys to lose his life here. Of course, the late great Keith Petersen, Brett McLeod, John Sneesby as well. People don't know too much about John, but it's a guy I fondly remember as well. So Kyalami was inherently dangerous, but it was a great circuit. So we've got the third version of Kyalami nowadays, because we went to this one, which is the old West Bank Leerkorp corner with a long straight. Then I went to Mark II version, which is where Mark Veldhagen also lost his life, and then the Mark III version, which is what it is today. Anyway, that's the history of this motorcycle, the history of Keith Petersen. I hope that you've gone along with me in this bit of almost self-indulgence, because for me, obviously, it is bittersweet memories. Time, of course, does heal, but when I think back how different my life would have been, and a lot of other people's lives, if Keith was still here today.